Every single society has certain aspects of it it doesn't want to give up. This one will. In Qatar, this one will. Everyone does. So please don't try to make this a kind of bigoted European thing. That would be a very, very dishonest way to...
In this video, Douglas Murray debates Muslim activists on the complexities of the global refugee crisis and proposes several key questions that need to be addressed. This was possibly the most biased mediator of all time.
Hi, I'm Hamad Abahawash. I'm a senior at Georgetown University. And my question is to Mr. Douglas Murray. And before I ask my question, I just want to say, you said no sound bites, but then you said the developing world cannot move to the developed world. I don't know what that's about.
I said it before.
My question is, since you brought up migration from the developing world, I'd like to ask you this. Every year, the developed world sends about $300 billion of aid to the developing world, but the developing world sends back trillions in debt repayments to the developed world. Now, don't you think that this is the main reason why migrants are moving to Europe? Because money is moving out of the developing world. Wealth is leaving the developing world and moving to the developed world, to build on what Lamont Hill said. Don't you think this is why people are moving to the Western world, to the developed world?
Well, no, I don't. Again, I repeat the fact there are no simple answers. And if it was simply the fact that you could, I don't know, do a debt default or something and solve the whole migration issue, then that would be great. But it just isn't the case. You think that if for instance, all African countries were allowed to default on debt, that they'd become burgeoning, flourishing societies? You think that the problem across, for instance, sub-Saharan Africa isn't just unbelievable greed and theft by politician after politician? You think that if you just wrote off the debt, that would stop being an issue and everyone would become transparent and clean in their dealings with money? I mean, the problems are much deeper than this. They're much deeper than just a simple solution like that. As, if I may just add quickly to the previous two comments, the late, very distinguished American diplomat Daniel Patrick Moynihan had a wonderful rule he came up with, known as Moynihan's Law, where he said that human rights, claims of human rights violations often happen in exactly inverse proportion to human rights violations. That is, you hear about them in the countries that are most free. And before long, you can end up with the presumption that the most free countries are the ones who are most abusive of human rights. And this happens with the case when we talk about our leaders and the ones... It's all very well. We can talk about the Trump administration. We can talk about the democracies and so on for all we like. We can all make criticisms, and we all should. But, okay, briefly, Mr. Putin, what are you going to do about him? What are you going to do about the mullahs in Iran? What are you going to do about the House of Saud in Saudi Arabia? You see, what we end up with is this situation. We go, oh, Mr. Trump. We can all do that. Believe me, I can riff on Trump all day.
But again, you're being quite selective, aren't you?
What are you going to do about the people you can't do anything about? Are you going to ignore them? Are you going to give them a pass? Or are you just going to enjoy beating up on the democracy?
I hate to have to interrupt you. There's something called democracy, though, isn't there? Elections.
For sure.
Murray emphasizes the need for careful delineation between refugees fleeing conflict and those seeking economic opportunities. He advocates for clear criteria for asylum claims and addresses cultural integration challenges. Murray's insistence on acknowledging legitimate concerns without dismissing them as xenophobic highlights the complexity of the issue. The debate extends to the role of debt repayments from developing countries as a factor in migration patterns. While Murray acknowledges the financial flows between developed and developing nations, he emphasizes deeper issues such as corruption and governance failures as root causes of migration.
Another question, please.
So I'm going to talk briefly about, my mother's experience as an immigrant, and I want to touch here on something that Mark Lamont Hill said, this power of education and telling people how refugees fit into the wider context of economic development. Here's why I'm very skeptical about that. Because when my mother arrived in the UK and her parents arrived in the UK, people still called them dirty packies. When she had graduated from Oxford University, she was still a brown person who was not seen as a citizen, right? So to what extent can we really sell this idea that being educated or fitting X, Y, and Z criteria is what you need to do as a refugee for people to humanize you? The inherent problem with these people is that they don't humanize you. You can't fulfill your oppressors' criteria so that they see you as human. So how do you humanize people?
Dehumanizing refugees, thank you very much. And with this, let me go to you, Douglas Murray. Because much of your argument, Douglas, seems to be about The us versus them, the fact that, we have our own values, our own Britishness, our own virtues, and they will come to our shores with their values, their traditions. You seem to almost suggest that they come to your countries with a lesser breed of values.
No, I don't think I said that at any point, and that's another time you've tried to put something in my mouth.
So when you talk about the difference in values, what do you suggest?
Look, first of all, I didn't say that. I said that there are challenges because we do know that there are challenges, and let's just be frank about this. I mean, for instance, I've been in the Gulf for the last week or so. I see more burqas in my home city of London than I have seen in the Gulf in recent days, certainly here in Doha. Now, I can't say I'm delighted by the sight of more and more burqas in London. Do I feel any hatred of the people who wear them? Of course not. Of course not. But I can't say I'm elated by it. And definitely there are times I think, what percentage of burqas in this area becomes like not that pleasant for everyone else?
But again, is it all down to burqas? Because again, you're not asking people with other traditions whether they care about the sight of people drinking alcohol or showing up in bikinis. Again, it's a very
we could in Britain
Western-centric viewpoint.
I'm not. I have to say, you're going to bark up the wrong tree if you think you're going to persuade a Brit that we should stop drinking alcohol because of people arriving in our country. I mean, that's not going to happen. These things are all a bit of give and take.
That you bring your own traditions that don't quite fit with theirs.
Well,
they don't.
Yeah, there are, as I said, and before we got all confrontational, which you did from the get-go, I said what the problem is here is that these things are all rubbing against each other. And in that situation, you have to work out what things you're willing to give up, which things you're willing to compromise on, and which ones you're not. You're not going to persuade the Brits to massively change their culture, but let me just make the point. Every single society has certain aspects of it doesn't want to give up. This one will. In Qatar, this one will. Everyone does. So please don't try to make this a kind of bigoted European thing. That would be a very dishonest way to. That would be a very dishonest way to represent
just answer this question
debate.
directly if you can. Which of your values are you most afraid to lose? Which ones are most threatened by
freedom
the
of
arrival
speech.
of refugees?
Freedom of speech. It's the first one. Oh, you think that's not a problem?
I mean,
you think that's not a problem?
But
you think? Sorry, no. Let me pick up on that. Let me pick up on that. It's very easy to snigger. It's very easy to snigger about this until you've had friends shot in a newspaper office. It's very easy to laugh about that until it's happened to people you know.
But Murray expresses concerns about the preservation of British values, specifically the visibility of cultural practices like the burqas, which he finds unsettling. Mark Hill accuses Murray of holding a Western-centric viewpoint and criticizes him for focusing on the burqas instead of other traditions. The debate continues with a discussion on the tension between holding on to one's values and compromising for the greater good. The conversation with Mark Lamont Hill delves into the challenges of integrating refugees into British society. Murray expresses concerns about cultural preservation and values, while Mark Hill critiques Murray's Western-centric perspective. The discussion underscores the tension between preserving cultural identity and promoting social cohesion.